Why don't you at least wear a suit, you poor guy? Don't tell me you don't have one. Jason laughed loudly as he said this to me. Our classmates, who had been reminiscing with us, looked surprised. I do have a suit, I retorted, irritated by Jason's words. I couldn't understand why I had to be annoyed in this pleasant place. Jason had always looked down on me. It was time to make him understand. I made a decision. My name is Mark, and I'm 30 years old. When I was a child, I moved frequently because of my dad's job. When I was in the 6th grade, my dad got another transfer, and we moved to a rural area. Sorry for another transfer, but this should be the last one, my dad told me happily. Though transferring schools was always tough for me, who was shy and introverted, I remember feeling relieved that it would be the last time. The middle school I transferred to was much smaller than my previous one, but my classmates were kind, and I was excited about my new life. However, there was one person who didn't think well of me. That was Jason. Hey, nerd. Stop studying all the time. Jason would always pick on me. I was just copying notes. Shut up. Don't talk back, especially since you don't even have a mom. Jason yelled at me. My mom had passed away when I was young due to illness. I, too, wanted to see and talk to my mom if I could. But that was impossible. Hey, Jason. Don't say that. When I looked sad, my classmates often stood up for me. That didn't sit well with Jason, and his bullying continued until we graduated middle school. If I got good grades on a test, he would cause a scene, saying, "You probably cheated, didn't you?" And when I got a good time in track and field, he would shout, "You false started, do it again," causing trouble for everyone around. Jason just really disliked me. I spent my middle school years avoiding him. A turning point came when it was time to choose high schools. I heard rumors that Jason was going to a prestigious school out of state, so I decided to apply to a nearby high school. Finally, I would be free from Jason. That's all I could think about. As planned, Jason and I went to different high schools, and I didn't have to deal with him anymore. I felt an indescribable sense of happiness. I made new friends and enjoyed high school life. I joined the track team and spent my afternoons training with my teammates. My high school life was a stark contrast to my middle school one, filled with joy and fulfillment. After a happy high school life, I graduated and got a job at a sewing factory. Although I wanted to go to college, I didn't want to burden my dad, who had raised me alone. My dad encouraged me to go to college, but I declined and started working at the factory. I got a job at a sewing factory for an apparel company. I wasn't particularly interested in clothing, but it was the only company that would hire a high school graduate like me. Before working there, I had never touched a sewing machine or known anything about making clothes. But my supervisors and colleagues patiently taught me everything. 5 years after joining, I finally mastered all the tasks in the factory. "Mark, I'm struggling with this part. I'll handle this. It should be done this way." "I see. You've really improved lately, Mark." "I can't slack off," Emily said with a smile. Despite having no particular talents, I became knowledgeable about sewing. My colleagues came to rely on me. Until that day, I had been living a fulfilling life. But then, one day, something happened. I went to work at the factory as usual and started planning today's tasks with Emily. Suddenly, there was a commotion at the factory entrance. "Is there something special happening today?" Curious, I asked Emily. Emily looked puzzled too. "Mr. Smith mentioned we have an important deal today." I glanced towards the factory entrance. And there he was. The last person I wanted to see, Jason, was standing there. I rubbed my eyes and looked again, but there was no mistake, it was Jason. Why is he here? I kept my head down and focused on my work, avoiding eye contact. "Thank you for coming all this way. It's a crucial deal, so it's only natural." Mr. Smith shows modesty toward Jason. Then, I noticed that Jason's voice, while talking to Mr. Smith, was gradually getting closer to me. When I looked up, Jason was right in front of me, smiling. He had found me. I had a bad feeling. "So, you're working here? I heard you started working right after high school, but at a factory? That's hilarious." I ignored Jason's words and continued working. Mr. Smith, surprised, spoke to Jason. You know each other? Mark is a hardworking and valuable member of our team. Jason laughed loudly again. You say this guy is valuable? In middle school, he was a total failure and always caused trouble for everyone. Unbelievable. Mr. Smith's expression hardened. Emily, working beside me, looked at Jason with a puzzled expression. A failure. Yes, it's true. Right, Mark? Jason suddenly directed his words at me. Annoyed, I said, I don't remember causing trouble for anyone. Stop spreading lies. Jason's expression turned slightly angry. I'm not lying. You've always been a failure. How dare you talk back to me? I was at a loss for words. Then, Jason said something shocking. Mr. Smith, if you want to do business with my company, fire him. With him around, your company won't succeed. He's a curse. The factory fell silent. My colleagues stared at Jason in disbelief. Mr. Smith took a deep breath and then said, Let's discuss this over some coffee, and led Jason to the office. I couldn't understand why Jason thought he had the authority to get me fired. He had always tried to control everything his way. As I sighed, Emily looked at me with concern. Don't let what he says bother you. He's really an awful person, she said gently while continuing her work. He's always hated me. I guess he just wants to mess with me again. For the past 5 years, I had worked tirelessly at this factory, and Mr. Smith knew it. Even though Jason, the client representative, wanted me fired, I was confident that Mr. Smith wouldn't let me go. But that confidence was quickly shattered. That evening, Mr. Smith called me into his office. I had never been called in before, so I entered the office with curiosity. Mr. Smith looked a bit down. Then he spoke heavily. Mark. I'm sorry, but could you take some time off until the deal with TA Corp is finalized? What? I couldn't believe my ears. I never expected Mr. Smith to say something like this. He continued. You know how important the contract with TA Corp is for this company, right? TA Corp was a famous apparel company known throughout the industry. I remembered Emily mentioning that this deal involved millions of dollars. Yes. Jason seems to have a grudge against you. If we lose the contract because of that, it would be a huge loss for the company. But I don't want to fire you, so could you please take a break until the deal is done? I want to make it seem like you've been fired. I could only nod at Mr. Smith's desperate plea. I couldn't understand why I had to take a break despite not doing anything wrong. But for Mr. Smith and the company's sake, I had to comply. For the next week, I stayed home. I couldn't focus on anything. I had asked Emily to cover my tasks, but I worried if she'd be okay. Then, I got a call from Emily. She had a task she couldn't figure out. I tried to explain it over the phone, but it wasn't working, so I reluctantly headed to the factory. I sneaked into the factory and approached Emily. Mark. I'm so sorry to bother you during your break, Emily said apologetically in a small voice. I discreetly showed her how to complete the task, avoiding the other colleagues. Emily understood and thanked me. As I was about to leave without being noticed, an incident occurred. At the entrance was Jason. Jason looked surprised. Then he shouted, What are you doing here? Weren't you fired? Damn. I instinctively stepped back. Hearing my voice, Mr. Smith came out of the office. He looked troubled. Mark. I just came to pick up something I forgot. I quickly lied to Jason. Jason snorted and said, See? Everyone is annoyed by you. There's no place that will hire a high school graduate like you. Now get out of here. Mr. Smith just stood there silently, watching. What had I ever done to Jason? I was fed up with him. Something snapped inside me. Jason, why do you always target me? I've never done anything to you. I couldn't hold it in any longer and shouted. My coworkers looked at me with concern. Emily, in particular, looked like she was about to run over, her face full of worry. Jason, however, was completely unfazed by my words and said, I hate you because you've never put in any effort. Do you have any idea how hard I worked to get where I am? Meanwhile, you just drifted along with an easy job after high school. You think I haven't put in any effort? Give me a break. Do you know how hard I've worked at this factory? Jason laughed. Anyone can work in a factory. No matter how hard I tried to talk to Jason, it never got through to him. I realized that at that moment. Talking to him was a waste of time. I ran out of there. Even as I left, Jason kept laughing at me. As I ran, I made a decision. A few days later, I called Mr. Smith and told him I was quitting. I couldn't let the company suffer because of me. Mr. Smith desperately tried to convince me to stay, but my mind was made up. I started looking for a new job, but it was tough and frustrating not finding anything right away. My dad encouraged me, saying, "You've worked hard until now, so why not take a break? Life is long. It won't hurt to rest a bit." Inspired by my dad's words, I took a year to do what I wanted. I had saved more than average from my 5 years of hard work. I decided to take my time finding a new job. When I finally found a new job, everything fell into place smoothly. I started working hard again. 6 years passed, and I turned 30. Life was good, and work was going well. One day, I arranged to meet up with Robert, an old middle school friend, at a cafe. Robert was my best friend in middle school. Since we also went to the same high school, we were as close as brothers, and even after graduation, we would occasionally meet up to catch up. He now worked for an international company and traveled around the world. I was thrilled when Robert reached out to meet. "Hey! Long time no see." Robert greeted me cheerfully. "It's been 2 years since we last met before your overseas assignment." Catching up with Robert was nostalgic, and we had a great time talking. "Hey, why aren't you coming to the reunion?" Robert suddenly asked. I couldn't understand what Robert was talking about. Reunion? A month ago, there was an invitation sent out. Jason and I were the organizers, and Jason said you weren't coming. This was news to me. I never received any invitation. It had to be Jason deliberately leaving me out. I never got an invitation. Jason probably didn't send it on purpose. He doesn't want me there. Robert looked shocked. Really? I thought you just didn't want to attend. That's awful of Jason. Robert angrily sipped his coffee. Jason's always been a jerk. Actually, I told Robert everything that happened 6 years ago. He looked at me, incredulous. I can't believe that happened. I'm at a loss for words. Yeah, that's true. But thanks to him, I am who I am today. So, I've let go of the past. Jason was indeed a jerk, but because of him, I became stronger. If it weren't for Jason, I might have remained insecure and untalented. After 6 years, I began to see it that way. So, what about the reunion? Jason will be there, will you skip on it? Robert asked, concerned about me. I laughed and said to Robert, since it's a good opportunity, I'll join you. Robert nodded happily. Honestly, I was a bit scared to see Jason again. He'd probably just make snide comments. But I wasn't the same person I was 6 years ago. I decided to attend the reunion with confidence. I promised to meet Robert at the reunion and then we parted ways. I was really grateful to Robert. If I hadn't met Robert today, I wouldn't have known about the reunion. Thinking about seeing old classmates again, I went home. On the day of the reunion, I wore a new shirt. Seeing me, my dad commented, "You're not wearing a suit. The reunion's at a 5-star hotel, right?" He looked worried. It was natural for my dad to be worried. Since the venue was a 5-star hotel, I needed to dress appropriately. But I didn't want to wear a suit on my day off. So, I chose a shirt that was casual but still suitable for the hotel. I'm going like this. Don't worry. Dad still looked concerned. But Jason will be there, right? Won't he say something nasty again? I had told my dad everything that happened 6 years ago. He still held a grudge against Jason. I reassured him, even if he does, I won't let it bother me. Dad seemed reassured and said no more. I left home, looking forward to seeing my old classmates. My steps were light. When I entered the hotel, I was greeted by a grand chandelier and a luxurious atmosphere. Excitedly, I headed to the hotel restaurant. Mark! Thanks for coming. Robert ran up to me, looking delighted. Hey! I'm excited today. I smile along with Robert. We entered the restaurant together. The restaurant was reserved for the reunion, with a lavish spread of food. Even before the reunion officially started, many familiar faces were already catching up and having fun. Seeing me, some classmates came over, excited. Mark! It's been since middle school, right? So good to see you. They chatted happily. We reminisced about funny and silly middle school stories. Before I knew it, the reunion had begun and more classmates arrived. By the way, isn't Jason amazing? A classmate suddenly brought up Jason. What's amazing about him? I asked. As I listened with interest, my classmate began speaking quickly. He's apparently the sales manager at TA Corp. TA Corp, that huge company? Jason has always been smart, the top achiever. And he's also advancing deals with that major apparel manufacturer. I see. Jason became a manager shortly after I left my previous job. Well, it didn't really matter to me. As I was thinking this, the restaurant entrance grew even more lively. Speak of the devil. At the entrance stood Jason. He was wearing an impressive suit. I instinctively looked away. Jason didn't know I was attending this reunion. In fact, he had intended not to invite me. If he found out I was here, he'd probably lose it. I looked at Robert. Robert whispered, "You've done nothing wrong, Mark. Just hold your head high." Thanks to Robert's words, I felt a bit more at ease. There was no need to cater to Jason at all. Thanks, Robert, I said, continuing to talk with him. Soon, Jason spotted me, looking at me as if he had seen a ghost. He never expected me to be here. He shouted loudly. "Why are you here? You weren't invited." Jason was red-faced with anger. "Robert invited me. I have every right to attend our middle school reunion, don't I?" Jason immediately responded. "I don't consider you a classmate. You're being audacious by coming here without my permission." His words caused a stir among our classmates. "You don't belong here." Good grief! How much more would he insult me before he was satisfied? I was exhausted. "So, if I leave, will that make you happy?" Jason snorted. "Yeah, that's right. Get out of here. And that outfit is way too casual for this venue." I had talked to a few classmates, so I decided to leave as Jason suggested. Then Jason added another snide remark. "At least wear a suit, you poor guy. Don't tell me you don't own one?" I was speechless. What on earth was he talking about? I do have a suit. I just didn't want to wear one on my day off. Jason laughed even harder at my words. I couldn't understand what he found so funny. "Stop pretending. You couldn't afford a suit, could you? Admit it, you're poor." I was stunned by his harsh words. There was nothing more to say. I turned to leave. Then, Jason said something unforgivable. "Hey! Want my old suit? It's so expensive you'd never be able to afford it even if you worked your whole life." I was inwardly furious but kept my cool and continued listening. "If you want a suit like mine, get a job at a famous company like I did. But you're too incompetent for that." I reached my breaking point. Why did I have to put up with this? But just as I was about to shout, Robert raised his voice. "He doesn't need your hand-me-down suit." I was surprised. Robert had always been gentle, and I had never seen him yell. Yet here he was, standing up for me. I nearly dropped my drink in surprise. Jason glared at Robert, equally surprised. "Hand me down? This suit is from KG Industries, the company my firm is about to do business with. There's no way someone like Mark could get a suit like this. Jason, I'm afraid I have to cancel that deal." For a moment, the room fell silent. What? It seemed like Jason didn't hear what I said. "So be it." I repeated myself. "I'm asking you to cancel the deal between your company and mine." The room was dead quiet. What are you talking about? My company doesn't do business with you. Do you really not recognize me? You don't know anything, do you? I asked, but Jason just laughed. What are you implying? You're just incompetent, Mark, nothing more. I took out my business card and handed it to Jason, who couldn't understand anything I said. Sorry for the late introduction. I'm Mark Davis, president of KG Industries. I've decided to cancel the collaboration between our companies. What? President of KG Industries. Jason turned pale. Robert laughed and said, see? That's why Mark doesn't need your suit. He's got plenty of his own. As I said, I am the president of KG Industries, a major suit manufacturer. The incident 6 years ago had set me on this path. After quitting my job, I struggled to find new work. But fortunately, I had savings, so I decided to take it easy and made a suit for my dad. My dad wore suits to work every day, and I wanted to create a stylish suit for him. When I gave it to him, he was thrilled, and I felt proud. My dad wore the suit I made for him to work the next day. When he came home that evening, he asked if I could make 2 more. Apparently, his colleagues loved it and wanted one too. Of course, I made suits for my dad's colleagues as well. The next day, someone else asked for one. This kept happening, and more people wanted suits made by me. Within a month, I had dozens of orders. I was amazed at how popular my suits had become. Seeing this, my dad suggested, why don't you start a company? With my own factory, I would surely be able to meet the demand faster. I decided to establish a company. It required a lot of money, and I took on debt, but people kept wanting my unique, stylish suits, and the business quickly grew. In just 6 years, my company went public and became a well-known suit manufacturer. One day, Mr. Harris, the president of TA Corp., contacted me directly. He said he definitely wanted to collaborate on a product with my company. Collaborating with a major apparel company like TA Corp would greatly increase my company's visibility. Mr. Harris, the president of TA Corp., was very enthusiastic and even said that he wouldn't spare any expense for the collaboration. Though the past troubles with Jason, a TA Corp employee, crossed my mind, I decided to focus on the company's future and went ahead with the deal. However, knowing that Jason was with TA Corp., I started thinking that continuing this deal wasn't an option. I never wanted to deal with such a rude person again. When Jason found out I was the president of KG Industries, he began to sweat and apologize profusely. I didn't know you were the president. Please forgive me. I ignored him and started to leave the venue. Jason followed me and stood in front of me. Come on, I'm sorry. It's my fault. It was too late for apologies. I sighed. It's too late. I won't forgive you. Jason then shouted. We're friends, right? How can you be so heartless? If Mr. Harris finds out this deal was canceled because of me, I'll get fired. Can you live with that? Jason still acted arrogantly. I took out my phone and made a call. Jason watched me, puzzled. Hello? I'm sorry, but I have to cancel our deal. What? What's going on? Your employee, Jason, has been too disrespectful. I can't proceed with the contract. The person I called was Mr. Harris of TA Corporation. When Jason realized this, he panicked and collapsed to his knees. I'll remove Jason from the project. Can't you reconsider, please? No, I have already made a decision. I hung up the phone. Jason, realizing it was pointless, sat there silently. I leaned down and looked at him. I have one last question. Jason stayed silent. But I continued speaking. There was something I had to know. Why have you always looked down on me? I never did anything to you. Didn't you realize how cruel you were? When I glared at him, he quietly replied, I was jealous of how you seemed to succeed so effortlessly. No one but the person themselves knows how much effort they've put in. The fact that you treated me so horribly because of that is terrible. Reflect on how much you've hurt me. With that, Robert and I left the venue. Apparently, Jason continued to cry pathetically. We walked out, feeling relieved. I finally said what I had wanted to say to Jason for so long. Thanks, Robert. I was grateful to him for being there. He smiled awkwardly and said, "We're friends. It's only natural to help each other out." Later, Mr. Harris and Jason came to apologize to my company. I apologize for Jason's behavior. I will transfer him to a regional office and make sure he fully reflects on his actions. Please forgive us. Mr. Harris deeply apologized to me. Beside him, Jason also apologized. I'm sorry. I'll reflect on my actions and never behave like that again. I sighed and looked at Emily, my secretary. She whispered, "They seem genuinely sorry. Maybe you should forgive them this time?" Seeing this, Jason was astonished. "You're from back then?" "Yes, when I established my company, I brought Emily on board. Having her around was reassuring, and I wanted to work with her. Moreover, Emily and I had gotten married and were now husband and wife." "It's nice to meet you," Emily said, shaking hands with them politely. After that, Mr. Harris and I continued our discussion and decided to proceed with the deal. Jason, as Mr. Harris promised, was transferred to a regional office and never appeared before me again. I heard that in his new position, he had a complete change of his mind and dedicated himself to his work. I hoped he would continue living without causing trouble for others. The brand that my company and TA Corp co-developed became a massive hit, creating a huge sensation. All the products became million sellers, generating billions in profit for my company. I couldn't be more grateful to Emily, knowing that none of this success would have been possible without her words. From now on, I will continue to make this company even better and ensure her happiness.